coaches. Today we are talking about emotional burnout in private practice. I don't know how many of you have experienced this, but it's often something that can happen to anybody, regardless if there's a pandemic or not. But it gets where you dread going to sessions, you find yourself irritated with clients. You might feel like you don't have the capacity to fully attend to the intensity of sessions. Or you may even notice that you may be fully present when you are doing your work, but then when you go home, there is a difficulty in attending to the emotional content in your personal life. You're feeling like you don't want to hear anything, you want nothing asked of you, you feel burdened in your relationships and not supported. You can also feel irritated much more easily. There's all different kinds of burnouts, but when it comes to the emotional one, I feel like it can be one of the most wearing types of burnouts because it's not as noticeable. It's something that we often are really great at hiding and internalizing. And whenever we are feeling burnt out in our practice, especially emotionally, even if we can rally for the sessions, usually after that, you're out of spoons, you're out of resources to continue in your business and in your personal life. So, what do you do about it? Oftentimes, people are like, well, take a vacation, take a break. And I think that taking a break is often a privilege. It's something that we don't talk about, that not everybody can take a break in a traditional kind of way that we've been taught in our society, that breaks are, hey, Tamika, that breaks are for, vacations and things like that. That takes money, that takes time, that takes resources. So I think let's just talk about in your day to day. Maybe you do need to pay attention to the pacing of the clinical work. Are you seeing the right kinds of clients that you feel that you can be energized for? Are there boundaries that need to be set again in the therapeutic relationship? And are there things that you can change in the therapy work that would give you breaks throughout the day? So, for example, some people really stack their appointments and that works for them. Other people, they need breaks in between the sessions to kind of clear themselves emotionally, shake off the previous session to be kind of fresh for the next one. So, breaks aren't just vacations, which I think are great. And even if you don't go anywhere, I think it's important to take time away from doing your regular daily work. But within the daily work, you still need breaks and rest, right? So I remember I had this really comfy chair and I made sure I kicked off my shoes, feet were up in between sessions, tea was made, we were jamming on it. And that would kind of help me clear emotionally into the next one. So when we talk about you need space in order to recover from emotional burnout, again, we can think in a meta big way of like taking weeks off at a time, going on retreat and all of that. And then we can also talk about how do you instill that at a micro level on the daily. So thinking about your schedule, what works for you, the types of clients, the type of work that you're doing can create more space. Marina asked, what are the signs of burnout? I was talking about it a little bit earlier, but I think especially when it comes to emotional burnout, we're talking about that irritation that we feel, resentment that creeps up either therapeutically or outside of the office, that maybe we hold it all together for our clients. But then when we get home, we're not the best friend, partner, parent, or family member that we want to be because we have no resource left. And that's not the point of doing private practice, right? The point isn't to go into business and then drain yourself dry so that we went into private practice because we wanted autonomy, we wanted control, we wanted the ability to have a better life and to also offer that for our clients. So first is looking at breaks on the big and the small. And I just want to honor acknowledge that maybe some of you feel like, I can't take a vacation, do a staycation, maybe do a half day off. You can step into it. I didn't start taking 6 weeks off just out of the blue. For me, I had to ease my way into it so that I could put in systems in place so I could feel confident about leaving the practice, about leaving the business, knowing that it will work on its own and I could still take time away, right? So doing that in the daily can also rejuvenate us with our emotional container when we're working with our clients. The next thing for emotional burnout, I think that is important, is what we do in that time, those breaks. As business owners, I find that people are returning calls and checking on bookkeeping, and they switch out of clinical into administrative mode very quickly. To me, that's not a break from the clinical. You're still just changing hats. We want a break where there is rest. So how do you rest? Everyone is different in how they do this. And if you're not even sure, I just want to give you some ideas of where to start, and then you can work your way through that. So rest might mean actual napping, closing your eyes and sleeping. Some of you can micro nap. That's not me, but more power to you. I think it's great if you can do that. Then you want to look at getting outside, grounding your feet in the soil or the sand, and being in touch with nature. Stretches. I do a lot of energy postures between things so that I can kind of cleanse my energy, like energy hygiene kind of work. You can do things like that. But you want to change your body posture. So sometimes we sit in the same therapy chair, or we sit in the same computer chair that we've been in when we're resting, but it's not a cue to our body that we've shifted roles. So it's important to do things that cue the brain of, now we can relax. Now we can move out of thinking clinically and being very involved in that way. So for me, it would be putting on music. It would be changing where I sat. I would go lay on the couch instead of sitting in my chair, or I would go outside. But turning off notifications, not checking your email. If, scrolling the YouTube and the TikTok works for you, awesome. I love that idea. Nicole does jumping jacks and stretching. But whatever that rest looks like for you, it's about nourishing, giving back to yourself. Emotional burnout happens when emotions are taken in and processed, but we are not held emotionally. So we need to nourish ourselves physically and emotionally, spiritually, holistically, so that we can keep that burnout at bay, because it's not necessary. It doesn't have to be part of the process. And then I think another aspect too is to look at, how do you bring in play into your day and at a larger scale. So do you have things in your life that are fun and fulfilling? That may be creative. For me, it's art. For others of you, it's getting out and playing in the mud or the ocean and hiking in the mountains or things like that. Playing with children, playing with friends, being silly, acting, singing, all sorts of things. But what ways do you play, and do you incorporate play into your daily clinical work? It can be with your clients, but I'm talking about, how do you play outside of session? So making sure that every day there's space created, rest created, and play that's being created, because that feeds, another part of our brain. It activates the, dopamine and things like that can help counteract that cortisol that's being released from stress when our amygdala is starting to scream at us because it's under too much pressure. I think the other thing that's really important to look at, emotional burnout and burnout as a whole, because we're in the middle of writing our next book on it, is often treated in community. And the US as a whole is pretty individualistic society, and we have a lot to learn from other cultures and ways and communal practices for healing. And often as a clinician, our work is in isolation. We sit quietly with our clients. There isn't other people in the room with us. It's pretty isolated, right? And so that community can help heal some of the emotional burnout, getting support, knowing you're not alone, having someone to talk to, having someone who understands, learning from other people in the way that they do their work and the way that they manage all the roles of having a practice. Community is key, I think, in healing that emotional burnout. So if you look at your week this week, when did you have time to connect with people in your community where you felt that you got the support you needed? Does anyone know you're burned out? Does anyone know that you're like on the brink of falling apart after a session? If we don't talk about it and support each other, this is just going to be perpetuated internally. I think a lot of the not reaching out can be due to shame and guilt, but normalizing, I just want to say you are not alone. I have been through many different phases of burnout, one of those being a deep emotional burnout where I felt that I could no longer kind of do the therapy work I was doing. At which point I took a break. I started making more space, finding ways to play. For me, it was like in singing. That's a big one for me, to kind of release energy and have some fun and play. And then, excuse me, building community. And that's what we really focus on at Zinni is having a community, whether you're in our free community or paid community, knowing that you aren't alone and getting support. Maybe you need clinical consultation. Maybe you just need someone who understands what it's like to be a private practice owner or a group practice owner. Those things are important to not go through this alone. So just to kind of recap, there is an overarching umbrella of burnout. And today we've talked about the emotional component of burnout. When we feel that we have no more emotional reserves to take in the emotional aspects of our therapeutic work, or to also manage the emotional aspects of our personal life. And it's in those moments that we are beckoned, we are called to pay attention, because if we don't pay attention, then our bodies will speak loudly for us. Our relationships will start to speak loudly for us. I think emotional burnout is a first cue to, hey, we're on the roller coaster towards full-on burnout, and we need to do something about it. So listening and tapping into your body and your emotions are important. So on the daily, making room for space so that you can have time to think and be creative, making time for rest and play and connecting with people who support you and understand you. We have a retreat coming up in next month. We'd love to have you join. And it's in this retreat, we want to show you ways to do that, how space can give you creativity, how space can restore your emotional container, and also how movement and play are key in helping unlock the stuck places of resentment, fatigue, or exhaustion. And then we will have guest people that will come in and do yoga. We'll have a dance class, all accessible for all body types and abilities. And then we're going to look at your vision and get creative, get out of the day-to-day seeing clients, and just for one day, teach you how to rejuvenate and protect yourself from burnout, nourish yourself, give back to yourself that gift of a beautiful life, right? We can get excited to start something new, and then we slam into the day-to-day and the grind, and we want to help pull you out of that. And because we're still in the pandemic, it's going to be very affordable, but I will add the link and you can join us. If you have other ways that you have dealt with emotional burnout, please share in the comments below. If you resonated with what we talked about today, I'd love for you to share this video as well. Thank you for being here, all of you. I hope to see you at the retreat. And until then, we'll do another video next week. Have a great weekend. Find time for that rest and play. And we'll see you soon.